Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for a discussion, summary, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to speak about a couple of topics that I've wanted to talk about, and it's in regards to Playins as a whole, and also like some of my views on analysis in general, and Worlds 2020, the play-in system, the group stage system, and 4 seeds. Going to cover a vast amount of topics and also talk about some of the games we had today. All in all, I wanted to start at the point where I bring up the topic of analysis. It's so important, to realize that it is so difficult to get everything 100% right. The reason why it's so difficult is because you don't have all pieces of information. Predicting League of Legends games is very similar to picking stocks or playing poker, right? You go based off of the information you have and you make the most educated guesses, right? In the end, it's guesses. If I'm investing in a company that I foresee to have a bright future, and then the CEO, who is leading it all, has a heart attack and decides to step down from the company, and he's the one with the vision, and that the company falls apart. That's a variable that, sure, if I was close to him and knew that he was smoking cigars on his balcony and drinking whiskey every night, then maybe I would be able to. But in contrast to League, the same way, what's going inside of teams, sure, you make educated guesses based off history, based off the information that you have. And sometimes, considering some of the analysts that are, the leaders, if we think about LS and I Will Dominate, or myself, our accuracy is pretty high. Our accuracy is pretty damn high. And sometimes things happen that are out of the ordinary, and that's a part of the analysis game. Usually at the beginning of the tournament, like looking back at 2015, when I look back at those predictions because I did predictions together with the people on the desk, and there was like a file with everyone. I looked back at it, and with the first week of play, my predictions were kind of all over the place. But then after, if you exclude the first week of play of my predictions, I had like a 95%, 90% hit ratio. And that is when I had very, very recent information to work with, because I got to see form and it became easier to determine who was better. Keep in mind this was 2015, so even then it was easier because there was less variables in League. It was a very, very vision-oriented play style, and the differences between teams were much more obvious than they would be nowadays. Because now you have an evolution when it comes to draft, and the game itself has some elements to it that create situations of risk, right? So obviously it has become a little bit harder because of the amount of variables that are in the game. But it's not a game where you can be 100% precise. And I think when you predict 70 to 80% correct, I think this is impressive. This is good. Past the draft, I'm sure all of the analysts that I mentioned above are going to have a much more accurate view, because that's also something that is a massive variable, right? Our opinion about who is going to win can change drastically after a draft. So that's another variable that I can't possibly predict. For example, today, I thought that Mad Lions coming into the series would be better. Obviously, this is wrong. This was wrong. This was a wrong assessment. My idea was Karzi and Humanoid have been performing well, and I had the instinct that I thought that Mad Lions would recognize this, or among weak side, simplify the game for Shadow, play for Humanoid Kazi. Through their draft, they didn't recognize this at all, and they dropped the ball. And I don't want to take anything away from Supermassive, because I don't think it only came down to draft. I think Cacao and Snowflower had a very, very strong performance today and did super, super well. And Supermassive deserved to get that W. There was also a very significant top gap in Armut and Orome. But I used the pieces of information that I had, and then there were variables that sometimes are unforeseeable. In the case of how the Worlds has played out, coming into the World Championship, we knew it was going to be a crazy one, right? I mentioned it in videos before everything started. This is going to be a crazy one because this year as a whole has been crazy. The level of play globally feels like it has been lower. I think maybe the LCK could be outside of that conversation. And maybe LPL, maybe, just maybe. Everyone has their own issues. Looking at LCK and LPL, these were the two regions that played offline for the longest time, right? For the longest time, they played offline. LPL never, they started playing from home, and then it switched over. They started playing in the venue again, right? So things were kind of almost back to normal. In the LCK, we played at the studio for the longest time, and then the only thing that we got to play at home was our final match against Hanwha Life. So the majority we got to play, offline. This matters, right? In Europe, it happened for Mad Lions, for example. It happened right before their series with G2. They won against G2, and their performance skyrocketed, right? These are variables that matter. Some players perform better on a stage. Some players perform better at home. Some players are better in scrims. Some players are worse in scrims. These small variables matter. This year, we knew it would be crazy because we had the quarantine. We had... every player deals differently with the quarantine. Every team deals differently with the quarantine. Coming into Playins, the format, because of the Vietnamese teams not being able to get visas, became super cocktail. You had a single round robin best of one, where in hindsight, now that I thought about it, I think the whole community jumped to so many conclusions based off of one best of one. Everyone shifted their opinions like clothes very, very fast. Everyone was very, very quick to say that this Playins is the most competitive it has been yet. And I was one of those people too. But now after reflection, I don't think it's so easy to just jump to that conclusion. Because we only saw best of ones that inflated a lot of teams' values. In the case of Supermassive, on the first day, they went 2-0, looked fantastic. But in hindsight, they beat INTZ, they went out of the group, and they beat Mad Lions. So that's what was, the hype was built off of this, right? And sure, it goes deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that. You can take a look at the games, you can break down the details. But a lot of hype was built off of that alone. Legacy, 3-1. I can make the prediction now that I don't think Legacy was the second best one in this group. I think if Legacy faced against Supermassive in a best of 5, I think Supermassive would win. But they got 3-1. And they got second place and are now facing LGD in a best of 5 tomorrow. The reason I bring this up is the play-ins in that nature brought a lot of randomness. If we look at the two brackets that ended up happening. We had Rainbow 7, LGD, and Legacy in one, in comparison to Mad Lions, Supermassive, Unicorns of Love. I think the bracket with Supermassive, Mad Lions, Unicorns of Love is definitely stronger than the other one. And these positions were reached through best of ones. Once again, I'm not trying to take anything away from anyone. We even saw INTZ beat Team Liquid. Do I think in any world that INTZ would win a best of 5 against Team Liquid on stage? I don't think so. But they won a best of 1. Does that make INTZ better than Team Liquid? Not necessarily, right? So it's a very important discussion to have, that there's a lot of variables, especially this year, that make things very, very crazy. And I'm not surprised that there was predictions that were wrong. I happily admit that I was wrong about my assessment of Mad Lions. Happily. I put Mad Lions above a lot of teams that don't. Right now, if I made a new power ranking, of course, Mad Lions would fall very, very far down. I wouldn't even consider putting them on the list because there's no letter that really they deserve. With the information we have, very easy decision. So I don't mind admitting that I'm wrong on this. No problem at all. The information that maybe I could have looked closer at was the information that these are players that didn't play on stage for a long time. So this was a miss, right? This was an aspect that I could have used in my calculation that I didn't think about. How will Mad Lions play on stage after being away from it for so long? My idea of Mad Lions was the meta hasn't shifted so much. I thought a lot of the issues that they had in playoffs in Europe were meta related. Their drafts were very, very poor. And I thought with time they're going to be able to solve that. Also, I had heard good things about Mad Lions' performance in scrims. So this is what I based that information off of. I also thought with their high variance play that they would be a team that would be exciting to watch. This is a team that had a trajectory throughout the year that they would improve. And this is not to make any excuses. I'm just explaining to you why I made this prediction. It was wrong. That's okay. No problem. TL, better. But there are some things that can't be accounted for, right? Another thing that I wanted to bring up is teams collapse, right? Teams collapse. It happens all the time, right in front of us. And there are many, many examples even in the recent years. So IG went from a world champion. Then the next year, in 2019, they won their split, went to MSI, in group stage looked as dangerous as ever, and then lost a best of 5 against Team Liquid. Once again, I don't want to take anything away from Team Liquid, but IG played significantly worse than they did in the other parts of the tournament. And I bring this up is because IG, from that point onward, just collapsed, right? At Worlds, they did all right, but the decline of IG has been very, very imminent. Same with FPX. There are many variables that are a part of this collapse. FPX may be meta-related. IG may be just being the same team for so long and refusing to move from the position that they're in. There was C9 from North America. Everyone had very high expectations for C9. In spring, the discussion was always, everyone asked me, Yamato, how well do you think C9 would do in Europe? How well do you think they would do at MSI? Everyone's excited about this, but C9 collapsed. Origin collapsed in Europe. 10th place from looking quite strong in spring. Completely fell apart. Origin, 10th place. Alfari on the team. Upset as well. Right? There's others. T1. Right? T1 looked good throughout the split. I don't think they looked terrible. But there was something that went wrong, right? I don't know why. I don't know how. Would I predict them to be winners? based off of history, if someone told me, I think T1's going to win the gauntlet, they have the history behind them, always when it matters, they really, really, when it comes to crunch time, they really, really deliver. That's like, yeah, that's a reasonable take. Historically, T1 always deliver. Faker and his T1. But that team fell apart due to variables that maybe we'll never find out about, right? Because it's all internal. And this is a big part of analysis, right? There are certain aspects that can't be accounted for. And what people that put themselves in positions where they predict things, they take the information that they have and they make their best judgment. Even sometimes you have a complete picture and sometimes you still make a wrong judgment. I'm not saying that, the analysts that I mentioned and myself are perfect in any shape or form, because I mentioned with Mad Lions, I didn't consider the aspect of playing on stage and Team Liquid's vast experience and how that's going to matter, even though they played in isolation too. And Team Liquid as a team, understandable that the stage matters to them. Code JJ, impact with their experience. This is something that I just didn't estimate, right? And that's a mistake that I can admit. There was another discussion about how fourth seeds don't belong at all from regions, right? They don't belong. And I think with the small sample size we've had, I think we are too quick to judge. I think we are putting too much thought into seeding. Coming into the tournament, I thought that Team Liquid was better than FlyQuest, but the seeding didn't show that, right? I'm not saying that just because I think Team Liquid is better, that they deserve to get a better seed for it, but seeding isn't everything, right? Seeding is determined sometimes by your performance on a single day. The performance you bring the next day and the circumstances you're playing in can vastly differ. That's the nature of the game. I think another important thing to highlight, on top of the fact that it's just a small, very, very small sample size, the fourth seeds. I don't think we should jump to conclusions about fourth seeds so fast. There was a lot of discussions about Schalke would have done better. Yeah, probably. Maybe they would have done better. But maybe Schalke as well. Maybe they only thrive in an online environment. Maybe they would have dropped the ball too. We had a very crazy LEC season where we had teams rise in a way that teams couldn't predict. There was a significant shift. If someone told me at the beginning of the split, where G2 and Fnatic are in, and they're convinced 100% that Rogue is going to be first and Mad Lions will be second and they will compete for first, I'll be like, really? Tough prediction to make, right? Another thing to mention now with a lot of these teams that have gone through play-in is that even in a tournament there is room for evolution. There are many examples of teams going through play-ins and then becoming so much better. I was even a victim of this, right? When I was at 2018 Worlds with Vitality, we had a group with Genji and RNG. Coming into the tournament, RNG just won LPL. Everyone thought RNG would be the favorite coming into the tournament. We had RNG and then Genji, former world champion. They won 2017. It was a very tough group. Cloud9 would get automatically seeded into this if all of the things that everyone assumed would happen in the play-ins happened. C9 came in and their play-in performance didn't look good. You can look back at it and their series went to 5 games. It was very sloppy, very dirty. And that lowered everyone's expectations coming into the group. And even now we have teams that are not playing good and playing dirty in play-ins. And everyone's so quick to jump to a conclusion to dismiss teams. Cloud9, that same year, went all the way to semifinals. Of course, another example of a team collapsing was, of course, Genji. But I think that was a bit written more in the stone, because the way they got through regional qualifiers was honestly pretty dirty. Pretty dirty. But not such a massive collapse. I had high expectations before facing them. Legit, level 1. Jackdaw was level 1, and he skilled W level 1 against Tam. And I can't remember what AD carry ruler played. But he W'd forwarded Alistar, and ruler, one of the best AD carries in the world, flashed. He flashed level 1 against a Alistar headbutt. How on earth do we predict that this is going to be the case? Same thing with Splice. Splice 2019 went through Playins, almost lost to Unicorns of Love. Coming into groups, I thought, Jesus, these guys don't look good. They played the tiebreaker against FPX and almost got first seed through that group. Instead, they got second seed and played against SKT, and that series was, Splice had some moments. And this was a Splice that struggled against the Unicorns of Love, that they were taken to 5 games. There is improvement to be made, and that improvement is very often hard to analyze unless there's a history of it. That's why now with G2, everyone has high hope for G2 because everyone expects improvement from G2. Looking at Perks historically, he, as a player, when it matters, he tends to level up his gameplay. But there's going to be a point in time where this is not true, right? But a lot of people are basing their expectations on G2 off of this idea that G2 will do better than they did in Europe. That's my estimation, but I could be wrong too. There is room to be wrong about almost every prediction. That's what I'm trying to get at. And this is the nature of the prediction game. So many interesting variables at play, and the excitement in it is very important to highlight. I think after draft, it tends to be easier to make predictions. Much, much easier. Like, I think after draft, I think even in play-ins, my prediction rate would be very, very high. And I think the same can be said for most analysts. I'm not doing this, saying this to brag. But before making assessment before the tournament, it's tricky, guys. It's tricky. Usually, you always look at people making their silly old, what's it called? The brackets when you choose who's going to win and so forth. It's always some crazy whack guy, one person in the world that gets everything right. It's for a reason, right? It's always like some guy doing it in his sleep and he's getting everything correct. There was this robot on Reddit that through machine learning, AI, was predicting games of the statistics and so forth and got a 55%. Right? Obviously, AI is probably not there yet to assess gameplay level. I just thought I would bring it up. And team collapses. And the reason I brought up the whole team's collapse is because, in my opinion, Mad Lions literally collapsed. I don't think anyone... I'm sure there are a lot of NA fans that were very confident in Team Liquid taking the group. That's okay. I can see the arguments for that for sure. If you are, viewing it through that lens, if someone told me, the experience of Team Liquid is so damn good, maybe they would have even convinced me, because I didn't think about this aspect. And even though you could predict Team Liquid over Mad Lions, I doubt there's many people that would say that Mad Lions would bomb out the way they did, right? Well, it's just a show conversation. I just wanted it to be said, I was just wanted to get it out of my system, because I think the play-ins really, really created and shaped opinions very, very fast. Very, very fast. It took one game to make a team amazing, and it took one game to make a team look terrible. For example, first game we saw, Mad Lions versus INTZ. INTZ had some moments in that game, and Mad Lions eventually won. And then off of that game, it was like, oh, INTZ, they put up a fight against Mad Lions. That's impressive. That's what people said. Right? And this was the thought. I'm not going to say that I said anything different. This was something that I kept in mind, right? But afterwards, the meaning of that just, the value of that just went down as the tournament progressed. The reason I'm exploring these thoughts is because I believe there is something to learn here. Maybe for myself or maybe for you. The value of INTZ's close game against Mad Lions went down and down. And then they dropped a game against, I believe, Supermassive, where they dove a tower top, and Shen was like 10-0-2 at the end of the game. It was horrible. Even that game, Supermassive draft was pretty cocktail. They had like a Lulu, Senna, Hecarim. Like Hecarim Lulu is good, Hecarim Shen is good, but then you have a Senna on top of that, and a kind of the reliance on Hecarim being fed here is super huge. And Hecarim was given a lot of free kills in this game, and Shen too. So they won that game. And then once again, Supermassive got really hyped because they won that game. And then because Supermassive beat the shit out of Mad Lions. They had, and that Mad Lions game where Supermassive won was a game where after losing to Team Liquid, it seemed like Mad Lions just didn't believe in anything they did and anything that they prepared. And they were like, okay, we are going to just copy Team Liquid's draft. And that's what they went for, the Twitch and the Rakan. And at the time, it looked like Supermassive had this in mind specifically against Twitch. They're like, okay, oh, this Wukong makes sense here against Twitch. That's pretty neat. That's a cool adaptation. They wanted to go for Wukong because they wanted to play it and pick it into Twitch. That's what I thought at the time. And I was like, wow, this is impressive. Supermassive have depth in their champion pools. And I thought this was exciting because they picked Wukong in this moment, and Wukong turned out to be a strong pick. But then afterwards, when Team Liquid played Supermassive, it turned out that they just like to pick Wukong, right? They just blind pick Wukong, and then there was a Shen into Wukong. Sure, that game Twitch was also played, and maybe still it was the thought process, picking Wukong into Twitch because Team Liquid like it. They picked Twitch Rakan. They didn't ban Graves, they didn't ban Shen, and Shen Twitch is very nice, and I believe that the Shen Wukong matchup is practically unplayable for Wukong. But that kind of showcased some of the issues with Supermassive when they finally faced, a proper team. Still, the hype was built off of the back of, these games against two teams that turned out to be very, very low ranked in this tournament. And I still think there's a world where maybe INTZ could, be in a different position. I don't think they are significantly worse like the others. Like the game against Mad Lions could have ended either way, right? That was a big coin flip game for Mad Lions. Humanoid really, really pushed for it. And then Supermassive, of course, also lost against Legacy Esports. They had the Aphelios pick, and it just didn't work. They were ahead, and then they just ran it down at the Rift Herald, and Ezreal got too fed. And they had the Ezreal Karma. And I think Legacy got 3-1 because I think their preparation was very, very good. They had good drafts. They were drafting better than the opponents that they beat. But I don't think necessarily that they individually or as a team did anything extraordinary to say with confidence that they are much, much better than the other teams in their group. beyond being much, much better at drafting. And of course, drafting is super important. I don't want to take that away, and it's going to matter when they face LGD tomorrow. But it's important to note that throughout the story and in this picture, even when it comes to the other group, right? Unicorns of Love looked very strong in the games that they played. They did a very bad draft against R7. R7 got hyped up. R7 as a stock just rose because they beat Unicorns of Love in pretty good fashion. Jose Ododo, I think, legit jungler. Evelyn play was very nice. And Unicorns of Love had a very poor performance, and they, in a best of one, that's okay, right? We wouldn't bet against Unicorns of Love against Rainbow 7 in the best of 5. The reason we wouldn't do so is because we have the opinion that Unicorns of Love is better than Rainbow 7. That was a win. And if you have a 70 to 30% win rate, that is going to be, that 30% is going to be the most significant in only one scenario. But if it's 5 games and you need to win out 5 games with 30%, it just becomes tougher and tougher to reach 3 wins, right? In best of 1, it means you have the highest chance because the gap just becomes larger with a larger sample size. And then Unicorns of Love against PSG, also in that tiebreaker, I think that they should have won. They were super far ahead, and Ziggs was honestly smurfing that game. No Man's played a very, very beautiful game. And that's why I think Unicorns of Love is going to be better than Supermassive, because I saw qualities in there that the other teams didn't show. And I felt the same for Team Liquid. Felt very, very much the same for Team Liquid. And to the trained eye, you can take things away from the best of ones. But there needs to be, the ability to reproduce it between the games. The games where Team Liquid played Graves looked pretty cookie cutter. Against Legacy, 2 games, they stomped them in 20 minutes. And after we saw the level in the groups, I think it was an easy assessment to make. My point being, just to summarize this, is it's very easy to get swept away by a single game, 2 games, 3 games. And I think just the format is very poisonous because of it. And everyone's saying that Playins was better than ever, but I think in a world where you have, a single round robin, it just becomes more entertaining because the room for upsets is just so much bigger. So much bigger. The amount of preparation you have to put into every single team varies, and some teams are better at preparing, some teams are worse. Like, for example, Supermassive, not knowing that, Graves is such a big deal for Team Liquid, not knowing that Shen is such a big deal, not banning it. If you look at this as an example, those are pretty easy steps in terms of research that you can make. Sometimes you have this information and sometimes you just make a wrong judgment call, so I don't want to make assumptions for Supermassive, but I just wanted to get my point across, right? Preparation and draft becomes very, very important in best of ones because you don't get a chance to repair otherwise very straightforward mistakes. We got to see PSG versus Unicorns of Love twice, right? So first game that they played, Unicorns of Love, blue side, first picked Renekton. Boom. What did PSG say? They were like, okay, we're going to continue with comfort. We're going to continue with what works because we are currently undefeated. We're feeling good. Let's lock in Echo Set. That doesn't make a lot of sense into Renekton, right? But they thought, okay, we're going to go with comfort. That works. We're just going to continue. Okay. Renekton super happy, sees 2 melee champions, no problem. The draft continues. They lock in Hecarim. They lock in Orianna. Decent champions against melee champions. Orianna into Echo, potential mid lane matchup they are fine against. Also Orianna into the potential set is also alright. Third pick is Volibear, another champion that all of the champions on the blue side are very happy with. And then the draft continues. They pick Jhin and then Alistar, and it ends up being a situation where Swain and Renekton are playing against 4 melee champions. The second time they face off, easy adaptation, right? Easy adaptation that is going to make the whole game look different. Enemy first picks Renekton, Unicorns of Love didn't change their draft, and they had Gangplank in mind to 5th pick. They changed up their draft, they picked champions that deal with Renekton better. Even though that game, the reason I say that Unicorns of Love showed good quality, 1 kill on Ziggs made all of the difference. 1 kill on Ziggs meant that he had lost Chapter when Orianna didn't, meant he had Prio, secured the Rift Herald, then afterwards roamed into top, got the full turret gold, and with this full turret gold, bought Luden's Echo, and this Luden's Echo advantage into Orianna became so significant, so large, so significant. He took over the whole map. He was pushing, roaming, pressuring. It was a very, very good performance of Unicorns of Love. No Man's really carried that. They went too far. They overpushed their lead. They dove a GP, and PSG with their composition that was cleverly designed to be good into some of the champions that Unicorns of Love had, were very happy to be in this position. They got the Nash, and PSG outscaled. In between games, the amount of changes you can make in terms of draft can be massive. It's the same if INTZ played Team Liquid and the next game they play again. Team Liquid is not going to fall into the same trap that they fell in the first game. Some adaptations are easy to make. Some research is easy to make. That's why best of ones are so silly. Very, very silly. In terms of, determining who really is the best. Sometimes you can. Sometimes things are painfully obvious. Sometimes, the trained eye can see qualities that can easily be reproduced, with, enough of a sample size. And sometimes you can't because of the nature of best of ones. So I just wanted to highlight that there's a lot of craziness and a lot of things to, discuss and to explore. But all in all, let's jump into the discussion of today's best of fives. I wanted to just take a quick look at R7 versus LGD. LGD, I think they kind of woke up. They played better than they did in groups. It was far from perfect. I wouldn't tell you that. There's still left a lot of things to desire. Peanut on his Kindred. I believe he played 3 games on Kindred. So this is one of Peanut's comfort champions. And comfort is very, very clutch for Peanut. I was reading the post from one of the LCK casters, I believe. Maybe LCK analyst or someone. Where Peanut very heavily relies on comfort champions. And that reflects in his win ratio. Nevertheless, Graves against Kindred is something we've seen many times, but Kindred has obvious weaknesses in the sense that she's very weak against poke. She's very, very good against dive. I really like Kindred as a design if we exclude the whole mark system. The mark meaning like the gamble on the crab and gamble on spawning random camps and then gamble on objectives. Like it's pretty silly. I wish that wasn't a part of Kindred's kit, but whatever. Kindred is very good against champions that need to go in. So Kindred can be used as a counter into Camille Galio, because these champions want to dive in, use combos, and Kindred is very happy to play into it. Volibear gets picked, and LGD have a very, very decent first 3 already. Nautilus Alistar. LGD recognized that Rakan has been very powerful throughout the play-ins. Ashe Leona. They pick Tristana to just make sure they have a good champion into Camille and Galio combinations. Ashe Leona means that Cleanse is going to have massive value this game. This was a position where they should have picked like Caitlyn Morgana, honestly. It would have been much better. But they went for Ashe Leona, which honestly just makes Cleanse too good. This game, LGD were active. They made a bunch of mistakes, but it just didn't matter because it was so obvious that LGD were just individually better. We continue on to the next draft. I don't know if you guys see it. I think you see it. R7 Nidalee banned Twisted Fate, they changed it up. Graves, this time around, he just went for Orianna Kindred, same thing. This was a decent adaptation from R7 where they went Azir Senna. Leona gets picked, Thresh and Alistar ban. Jhin is picked 4th. Nothing out of the ordinary here, Nautilus, and then I guess R7 felt the need to have an AD champion. Not sure about Aatrox as a blind pick. Camille was banned. If we think about other blind picks, maybe you would look to pick like you don't want to pick a tank against Kindred. Honestly, it's a tough spot to pick a top lane because nothing really sticks out to me as the obvious choice. Renekton being banned, Shen being banned, Ornn being banned. Picking Sion against enemy team might be a mistake. Maybe you'd just look to pick a Gangplank. Probably use Gangplank as the best. Yeah, I think you just pick Gangplank. Enemy has Jhin and Orianna and Kindred. You will be happy to play GP. I think you just pick GP and then you counter 5th, right? Now Aatrox are on a pretty similar level on the user scale because playing Nara against Azir Senna Graves is also not so neat. So this was a bit of a wonky draft. Once again, it ended on the same note. LGD was just individually better. LGD by no stretch of the imagination were they clean. But honestly, I watched the series a long time ago, so I can't say with full confidence that I have a clear memory of what was going on. I remember game 3. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. today to catch my call time at the studio. LGD, Lucian, Shen, Lilia, they got the first pick Ornn. I thought that they got a very, very good and cohesive draft. Kayle to Ornn was considered the counter pick, and Kayle has had some changes, right, to swap around some of her strength. But all in all, I think Kayle is a bit too slow of a champion in the current meta. There's a lot of fighting going on, especially in the Playins meta, and LGD, even though Syndra was kind of running it down, she was getting killed left and right, and was getting caught and was being very problematic in this game. It didn't matter because Jia didn't lose his confidence, found some kills on Lee, and eventually LGD took it home. I think LGD is going to look to win against Legacy. I think they will be favored in that matchup. I don't think the drafts will be as easy for Legacy as they were in the games that they won. The reason, just to give you guys an example of the Legacy drafts. Let's take a look. Let's find it. These were tiebreakers. Legacy beat Supermassive. This was Ornn first pick, Nidalee Wukong. Wukong is not so good against Ornn. Lilia Set gets locked in. 3 champions that work well together. And Set was a big staple pick for Tally. So this is a very, very strong first 3. Lulu gets picked. I don't understand why you would ever pick Lulu against Set. Lulu, Nidalee synergy is at an all-time low. There is no stonks here at all. I think maybe you could have looked to pick Caitlyn 3rd or something like this, but Nidalee, Wukong, Lulu, first 3 is very strange. Caitlyn gets banned and they lock in Aphelios. Aphelios has fallen from grace, no longer does he have Hollywood Michael Bay moments. Ezreal Karma, very smart rotation here. Any type of damage mix works because they have a team that is tough to itemize against anyway. Aphelios, Ezreal Karma is very happy, and then Aphelios is just a bit of an outdated champion now. I don't think he's super good. Even in this game, Supermassive managed to be ahead, but I just wanted to highlight the draft, right? Here as well, Legacy, this was Mad Lions, going for, I don't know if Boris on that day had a sale on AP items, but this just, like having full AP team is pretty true. Like obviously Ezreal does some physical damage, Shen too, but this was very, very bad, especially when the enemy gets Ornn, the enemy gets Galio, the enemy gets Graves, all champions that are very, very easy to, buy magic resistance on. So that was pretty goddamn troll. That's why I'm rating Legacy a bit lower. Let's continue to a very exciting portion. I'm sure everyone's excited about this. Supermassive, Akali, Orianna, Twitch, Mad Lions, Ornn, Red Side Band, they're afraid of the first pick one. Here, Shen gets picked. I don't understand why on earth when enemy shows Shen that you would pick Senna Wukong. It's just terrible. Like, Shen is naturally very, very good against Wukong. There's no reason to pick Wukong here. Senna can be in some situations good, but I think with the development of this series, Senna was just not working. I think it came down to Mad Lions and their players recognizing who's underperforming and recognizing who's performing. I think Humanoid was the best. I think Kazi was second, and then Kaiser had moments, but I think as a support, it's tough sometimes to show what you're capable of if your team is running it down. So with this in mind, we wanted to have agency in the mid lane role and also agency in the AD carry role. And when you pick Senna Wukong, not so much agency. And there's no reason to pick Senna Wukong here against Shen. It just doesn't give you anything. Like, enemy shows Shen, you're not picking champions that are necessarily OP. You're not picking champions that are good for draft. You are picking champions into Shen specifically, and Senna Wukong just don't fit the bill here. The continuation was Hecarim Galio. Mordekaiser gets locked in to lane against Shen. Alright, decent matchup for Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser got pretty fed this game. And then Leona Nautilus ban. Set gets 4th pick. This was a Set jungle, something that Shadow has played once, and it didn't look good. Ezreal Alistar just pick champions that scale well and do super well against Wukong. They took a lesson from, of course, R7 when they played against Unicorns of Love. That team picked Wukong into Camille, and then Ezreal Alistar just hard counter Wukong. Very, very easy. No problem at all. Ezreal is a very, very good, well-rounded champion, and in this lane he's not going to get punished because that's Ezreal's current biggest weakness. His lane phase is just rather weak. And then now they have the issue that they have to pick a mid laner. Ideally, you would want to pick Azir here. Picking Syndra while the matchup is fine against Galio. Picking Syndra against Hecarim, Shen, Galio. The combos are very, very tricky, and Humanoid is not going to be set up to carry this game at all because he will be forced to itemize defensively. He's going to have Void Staff, Liandry's. He's going to have Zhonya's to avoid any potential Hecarim ults into just straight up one-shot. There's many items that Syndra needs to buy in order to be completely effective against this team. It's just very easy for Supermassive to reach her. So this was a game that was very wild. It was back and forth. Teams threw. It ended on Supermassive getting Soul Drake, and the way they got it was Orome was just too late to ult Hecarim, and that was just a plain old disaster. Another thing that happened this game, Mad Lions with their second time set, they tried to gank bottom side exactly when Shen ult comes up, and Shen ulted bottom, and they actually, I believe, they got a triple kill. So it looked very, very harsh for Mad Lions at certain times, but this game looked much more competitive than some of the other games we saw at the tournament. Mad Lions now with blue side, a bit of a dream draft. They went for Ornn. Ornn, first pick, easy, straightforward. Shen Graves gets locked in, also not too shabby. They're going with, of course, the Team Liquid path here. Shen into Ornn is a decent matchup, but it's not like super one-sided, right? Then we have the Zoe lock-in. A bit too focused on the matchup, but Azir ban, so they go for Zoe. But Zoe is not that great against Ornn, so that's where the question mark ping comes up. It's also not that good with Shen. You're picking Zoe only to survive this matchup, and Lucian, I think, as the game progresses, does super well against Zoe. I think this is a very, very comfortable matchup for Lucian, especially because he has an AP jungle and an AP mix top, right? So this is a very, very comfortable game for Mad Lions, and also a decent draft. You know, Senna, Leona get picked here. I know everyone complained about the Senna, but I think the biggest issue was just Senna Wukong. Like, that just was too outdated. And I think this game, just because they have Lucian mid, Humanoid has enough agency to just pop off and do all the dirty business himself. With other champions, he can't. Next game continues. and another draft that belongs in Davy Jones' locker. Supermassive decide to ban 3 mid laners, 1, 2, 3, and then they go for a Lilia ban. I mean, Lilia first pick, Graves, Senna. Graves, Senna, like Graves isn't super good into Lilia. Especially Graves drops down in value if you're not planning to play a tank top. I think tank top is almost necessary with Graves because they synergize so well with Graves. Graves Senna gets picked. No tank to be found. They go for Azir Leona. They're just picking comfort. Like, sure, Lilia Azir don't have that much of a synergy, but they the way Supermassive plays is usually Lilia just plays through her side lanes. There's not a lot of 2v2 action when it comes to Supermassive. Oh, it's a nice yawn. Oh, that felt amazing. I was gonna take a sip of my water. Syndra gets picked. So already now, you just know that this composition is very weak against tanks. Very, very weak against tanks. Who's gonna kill tanks? Who's gonna kill tanks? Who's gonna kill Leona? Syndra is not that good at killing tanks. She's good at controlling the battlefield. But in terms of mages, she's one of the worst ones to kill tanks, right? Malphite ban. Supermassive, they were afraid of it, but I think Mad Lions didn't know it existed. Ezreal Ashe get banned, which was probably the wisest choice, but they went for Wukong. So after the first game, that was so terrible with Wukong, they decided to go Wukong and make their composition even weaker against tanks. Wukong doesn't like tanks that can buy a lot of armor. Sion gets locked in, and then Misfortune. Misfortune is a special champion for Zeitnot, who decided to shave for today's series. They went for Misfortune just to get that 80 damage and, whatever. I think that's, this is a conversation that you could argue against, Maybe you just say fuck it and go Caitlyn Leona or something like that. But I think they didn't want to pick Caitlyn because Caitlyn Leona is not like the strongest combo ever, because it's hard to pin down a trap and even harder for Caitlyn to proc all the passive stacks that Leona applies before she reapplies it. And then Seth gets locked in last. So they send Wukong top against Sion, and then... Actually, no, sorry. They send Wukong bot and then Seth top. And Seth was alright. Seth was alright. Seth was not terrible. This was one of Oroma's better games. He found some, returns here, which was alright. But I just wanted to imagine a world where, a world where they didn't go down this rabbit hole in terms of draft. Imagine they went for... So, 1, 2, 3, they didn't have room to ban Azir. Enemy go Lilia. Let's say you pick Graves Azir. Good duo. Enemy gets denied Azir. I don't think Humanoid needs to be afraid of counters. Humanoid plays Azir. Let's say that's an example. You deny it from Polulu. And then third, you can look to pick AD. You can look to pick Ezreal, an AD carry that has found a lot of success. And then the continuation. You look to pick fourth pick support with maybe some AD carry bans or something of the like. And then if the enemy picks a tank, you just match with picking a tank. If the enemy picks something else to blind pick, because we recognized before that it's difficult to blind pick top when there's a lot of bans, you just pick whatever tank suits the best. So if you play Sion or you play Maokai, whatever. And this would highlight Mad Lions' strengths instead of exposing them. Because regardless of what you want to think about this game, Supermassive did indeed play better. They got ahead, they stayed ahead, and Mad Lions couldn't really do anything. I just think that this draft is one of the worst ones we've ever seen. And we've seen a lot of terrible drafts in Playins. A lot of very, very bad drafts. This game, Supermassive decided to run it down in draft. It was kind of a trend here that red side made some very, very bad choices. Like even in this red side game, Supermassive, where they lost. Like this red side draft is terrible. Like people were asking if blue side is just OP. Sure, you can dictate a little bit more with your bans, but I think when a team has a larger champion pool, they can look for 1 to 2 trades, and this can shift very, very easily. It's just that in this Playins, Ornn was Giga Prio and it had to be banned, and then Supermassive could just pick jungle first or whatever. This red side draft is not good, we went through it. This red side draft also is a bit more arguable, but I feel like Mad Lions really nailed it with this draft here. Just Zoe Ezreal is not good against Leona, not good against Senna, not good against Lucian, not good against Ornn, and then Lilia Eeps and whatever, but there's a lot of heavy engage on Mad, and there's dashes on Lucian, and Senna can heal a lot of the damage that they are going to cause with their poke. And then Zoe Ezreal together with Shen, Graves, Nautilus, all of these champions just have too different of a goal. Like Shen is going to ult on who, like he's going to ult on Ezreal and get delivered. I think if you can't deliver Shen most of the time, it's not the best champion unless you can snowball super hard. Twitch could be good or whatever. This too we discussed it, red side draft, toilet, and then Supermassive red side draft, also toilet. This game, the only reason it was close is because the only champion here that is good against Cassio is Leona. But when Cassio is laning against Set mid, no problem. No problem at all. You can go cleanse. Cleanse is decent against Set, doesn't force you to flash if he flashes in ease. With the extra move speed, if you have Nimbus Cloak, can get you away from Set when you cleanse for his flash. And I just think flash, cleanse was just so OP in this game. So OP, and Mad chose to not go for it. But Cassio was a very clever pick here, because all Set, Sion, Lilia, these are champions that can be very, very up close, and Cassio, in Humanoid's position, he needs to be the one killing people, regardless of the state of the game. Like, he needs to be the one killing people. Humanoid was the carry in this best of 5. So Cassio was a very beautiful pick. Then Alistar. Sure, this Vayne pick can be fine against Ali, can be fine against Vayne, but Vayne can be fine against Ezreal, but that's it. You can lane fine, but you're not going to be able to push. Your itemization is going to be slow. Vayne needs to pub stomp the shit out of her lane to be giga useful. And at the same time, Cassio, Ezreal, Graves was very difficult to maneuver against when you're playing Vayne. It's very, very hard. So I think Mad Lions had a draft victory. But even in this one, Bolulu found some nice engages onto Cassio. He got pretty heavily punished over the fact that he didn't have cleanse. And Bolulu was finding flanks, they were finding fights, but then eventually Kaiser delivered everyone. Very nice pulverizes, and Mad Lions, when Cassiopeia hit Void Staff and QSS, Leandri, and of course Archangel, Cassio was very, very useful, and whatever Sion and Set would buy became obsolete. So now the biggest tragedy of them all, reaching into game 5. Full disclosure, I thought even in this position, before this game started, I was like, I believe Mad Lions after that previous game have showcased that they understand their weaknesses as a team, and they're going to draft towards it. And now in this last game, it's going to be alright. Oh boy, was I wrong. Oh boy. Oh Long Johnson, was I wrong. Lilia banned, same 3 mid lane bans, Akali, Orianna, Lucian. Leona Graves, very, very good lock in here, Caitlyn Morgana. We saw so many Leona blind picks and too little Caitlyn Morgana, so this was very, very nice from Supermassive, right? Already something very, very disturbing and difficult to deal with. Senna, once again, knowing Mad Lions, you would say that this is bad. In other cases, I would be like, yeah, this is fine. But in Mad Lions' case, it was no longer about optimization. It was about what champions can we play where it looks like we have arms. So it's a different type of optimization. It's optimization that doesn't apply to everyone. It was Mad Lions' optimization. So Senna didn't feel right, but Caitlyn Morgana against Leona is going to be tough regardless of what AD carry you pick. So Ornn was already banned on red. Azir was banned too, and Nidalee was open, but they just thought that Supermassive was gonna first pick Lilia. Fine. They banned Shen Wukong to pick Renekton. It's probably the worst Renekton pick that I've seen in a long time. The worst Renekton pick that I've seen in a very, very long time. Absolute poisonous. Absolute tragedy, man. It is literally like it's like, I don't want to be inflammatory, but it's disgusting. The reason is, so I'm going to tell you all the reasons why it's disgusting. Okay? All the reasons that it's disgusting. First of all, Wukong, Shen, Renekton beats these champions. Okay? Renekton beats these champions. You ban Shen Wukong to blind pick Renekton. You reach the conclusion as a team that the enemy top laner is too good or what? So you go Shen, Wukong ban into Renekton. That is first. That is the first tragedy. Second tragedy, your top laner has been underperforming. Something that we had in Sandbox was very nice because we could have honest conversations. We established very, very early on trust between one another. This is always the core of my philosophy in terms of how I build my teams. Trust. The trust needs to be built around the same idea. This idea is that everyone is doing their absolute best for the success of the team. Having this idea in mind, anything that could come across as personal or attacking, everyone's just trying to contribute to the situation their way. You know, sometimes someone's going to tell you something that you don't like, but sometimes it's true. But sometimes maybe the way they deliver it might upset you. But this is just you being emotional, right? The trust needs to be established first. So in Sandbox, there was no shame in admitting, there was no shame at all in admitting that, oh, we're playing against Damwon. This is a very, very tough team. Let's think about what we want. So Fate, what champions do you feel confident against when it comes to Showmaker? And we would discuss it. We would say, okay, Showmaker is always a very tough one to beat. He has a lot of success against it, and against in scrims we had a hard time against it too when we played it 3 weeks ago. Fate, no ego at all. He would say, yeah, I think we should ban Zoe, we should remove it. This will increase our chances. We would play against Genji. If I came into the room, I had this idea in mind that we would ban 3 AD carries and try to put Ruler in a position where he has as little agency as possible. No ego at all. Our bot lane's like, yeah, this makes sense. Ruler and Life are very, very strong laners. Sometimes it would be like, sometimes you have weeks where you have a dip in performance. And players weren't afraid to admit this. It's like, oh, I did bad. I think this week maybe we should simplify. And this is the relationship that you want to build up, right? And there's been situations in the past in my teams where I had to present this idea of what they should play in a very specific way. Could be like, oh, I see that my bot lane is underperforming. How do I convince them to play a less agency lane in the game? For example, let's say I wanted them to not play a very lane-centric matchup like a Zyra Khan into something Instead, we played maybe like an Ezreal Town, something that's more simple to pull off, and the goals of what you want to achieve is easier, right? And with some players, I needed to wrap it in chocolate and say, hey, Ezreal Town is pretty strong right now. Look at these results. This team is playing it. Look at Ruler of the LCK is playing it. It's very good. This is an easy way to secure victories. Wow, it's so impressive. They are so good as a bot lane to make sure that they don't die, right? Sometimes I had to shape it in a way to convince him, right? Because sometimes that ego is always going to be a part of the conversation. But here we are sitting in a position where everyone can obviously look into Mad Lions and realize, wow, this is a team and this is a situation where the top laner is really, really struggling in the position he's in, right? Really, really struggling. What are we going to do about it? Simplify. Renekton is something only the best teams can pull off. It's a very dangerous champion because if you make a couple of mistakes, this champion is not useful. This champion is good. Renekton is good to supply space for junglers that are going to, of course, scale into the game and dominate the early game. For example, in Nidalee Renekton. Because Nidalee has an avenue to play through no matter what. So that's good. When you see Damwon pull it off, it's good. They make it work. So to be in the mindset where Renekton gets picked here is very strange considering all of the things that we've seen in the tournament. This is an obvious mistake. I think regardless of what you want to think about the players, the team as a whole in terms of their preparation and their drafting, very, very appalling. Very, very appalling. Yamato, you really make me upset by saying Morde failed to ult Hecarim early. Heka R cancelled disable, so it's not as simple as you put it. You know that Mordekaiser ult lasts very long. He just needs to, at some point, walk up to him. If he walks away, then you push him away, and that's enough to win time to shut it down. A Mordekaiser ult lasts for 7 seconds. So that's the only thing I could read, this donation. You're making me really upset by saying Morde failed to ult Hecarim early. Hecarim R cancels disables, which is a very silly tangent but that we shouldn't go on to, but yeah. Anyhow, this Malphite pick is the most valuable Malphite that I've seen in recent times, and on top of that, Armut won lane against Renekton. Renekton should be winning against Malphite. This Malphite doesn't counter Renekton, it's just something that Malphite will survive, and then the fact that he's Malphite, it'll be fine. There were many, many spots in this tournament for Malphite. But here, Senna, Graves, Renekton, how is Malphite ever gonna die? Very, very nice. And the final reason why this Renekton pick is so goddamn disgusting is that it's together with the Graves. Together with the Graves. Like, what on earth? Like, Renekton Graves is not a 2v2 that exists. Like, the reason Renekton would beat a Wukong is because you want to pair Renekton with a Nidalee, and then Wukong has no chance. He just doesn't have a chance. Very, very easy. Very, very easy. Here, Bramble, this Malphite builds Bramble West and the game is over on top side. And then Armut, the way he played it, he was ahead. He was 1v2ing. He solo killed the Graves. He almost killed the Renekton 1v1. What on earth, man. Here you might as well, I don't know why people just refused to pick GP. Why was GP only played one game in the entire Playins? I think you can like go GP. But even though this Renekton pick is bad, if you look at first 3, it's complete annihilation too, right? This isn't just Renekton ending the draft. This is complete annihilation in first 3 picks too. Lelia Graves. Graves gets no value out of his true grit. The odds of him getting a tank is significantly lower because he has Ornn. And Leona Senna against Caitlyn Morgana. Like, what do you want to accomplish there? Caitlyn Morgana wins. Caitlyn Morgana just wins. So even though this Renekton is dirty, first 3 is also fucking dirty. Really, really fucking dirty. Awful. Shen Wukong get banned Renekton. And then there's this big discussion about 5 pick. To be perfectly honest, there's not a champion in the game that is going to succeed or cover up for all of the shit that Mad Lions has picked already. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. So I can understand Corki to some degree, because humanoid has the mindset like, I have to fucking kill everybody. I have to kill everybody. What do I do? What do I do? So like right now when I'm looking at it, my thoughts are, okay. So let's explore. Let's bring up a champion list. I'm just gonna bring up a champion list just to make sure that I go through the motion. It's just so tough because Supermassive's composition is so well-rounded. So well-rounded. Very, very nice composition from Supermassive here in the last game. List of champions. I don't want to see list. I just want to see like all of them. Champions. League of Legends champions. I don't want to see a list. I want to see it like in the usual format. I'm trying to find it. Sorry, guys. Okay. Akali was banned. Ahri is awful. Anivia against Malphite. That would be a disaster. And Caitlyn Morgana have long enough range to play around Anivia. Okay. Aurelion Sol is a joke. Azir was banned. Cassio was banned. Corki. Okay. Let's keep that in the back pocket. Corki. Diana is a big no. Echo is a big no. Fizz, Galio, no. Heimerdinger, no. Aurelia, no. Kassadin, no go. Karthus, no go. Kayle? Kayle could maybe 1v9, like, it's a disaster. Kayle against Seth is a fine matchup. This is troll, but yeah. Katarina, no. LeBlanc, tough. Like, what the fuck do you do with LeBlanc this game? You can't. Can't do anything. Lux, no. Lulu, no. Lissandra, no. Kog'Maw, no. There's nothing that solves all the problems here. Malzahar, maybe Malzahar. Maybe you pray that with Malzahar you can kill the tanks and that you have your shield, you block Malphite ult. I don't know, that's fucking troll too, right? Nico, not good enough. You get outranged by Kate Morgana. It's a big problem for you. Because no one in your team, so the issue that you have to deal with is, no one in your team can kill Caitlyn Morgana. No one in your team can kill Malphite Sett. That's your problems. You have to kill Malphite, Sett, Caitlyn Morgana. What champion deals with all 4 of these champions? So we have Kayle, that's an option. Orianna was banned. Kayle is like, okay, maybe there's some potential with Kayle. Ryze, no, you can't play Ryze here. Rumble, no. Rumble, Sett buys a cloak. He buys Bami Cinder and Spectre Skull, and you're gone. So we're going down the list. Ryze, no. Rumble, no. Singed maybe? Singed God? Sprinted? Sylas, okay, you have Malphite ult, but the enemy has Morgana. So you're gonna burger flip yourself. So you steal Malphite ult, you burger flip yourself, right? You completely burger flip yourself. Morgana black shields your ult, and you get popped. You just die. Because there's no way in hell you're gonna fucking ever survive. Right? Syndra was banned. Swain no go, playing Swain against Caitlyn Morgana. Like, how on earth are you gonna do this? You have to 1v9 the game with your pick. That's how useless your 4 other picks are. You have to 1v9 the game. Maybe Leona can help you. Maybe Leona can help you. Maybe Soulscreen can help you. Like you have to do some ninja magic. Talia, no. Twisted Fate to gank for the Renekton. Gank the Malphite. Very nice. Victor, Vel'Koz, Veigar. I don't know, man. You're playing this against Kate Morg, Malphite set. So hard. Like, Victor's items are so expensive. Getting Void Staff always happens very late. Very, very late. Vladimir. Problem with Vladimir, like, he's not gonna fucking find prio against set. Like, Vladimir needs to buy some premium items. Like, here, Vladimir maybe is okay, right? Vladimir, at least you can deny the Malphite ult. But Vladimir isn't that fantastic at dealing with set and Malphite in terms of killing them, right? It's just, there's no pick that's gonna solve this. It's just the draft is just too poor. Xerath, yeah, Xerath. Get Malphite ulted in the forehead. Ziggs. I don't know, man. Like, the thing is, set mid is not bad, right? Set mid is not bad. Thing is, Supermassive fantastic draft, Mad Lions shit draft. Like, why are you banning these champions? Like, imagine you ban Set. Yeah, you ban Set and champion pool is opened up. You have a lot of more options. That's why Shen Wukong bans were a tragedy. Like this guy played Set mid every game. Except the one game he got Asia. Like he played so much Set mid. Not every game. I lied. But he played it the 2 last games. You know? There's no R5 that... We need like a new champion. We need anti-mage. Anti-mage would be good here. So you pick anti-mage, you split push, you blink away from Malphite ult. Oh, that. I'm considering here just put Renekton mid, Vladimir top. Like, that could be okay. maybe that's an option, man. Maybe that's an option. Just go Vladimir top, and then go Renekton mid. But the point is, like, we can talk about this forever, right? Like Corki, like the reason he picked Corki is like, shit, man. I need to dodge Malphite ult. I need to kill the tanks. I need to kill the front line. I need to scale. I need to figure out how to lane against that. There's too many conditions the R5 pick needed to fix. Too many things. And this is the conclusion, right? Mad Lions could never figure out their draft problems, because even though we laugh at these draft problems, looking back at the previous days, we had this. You know, this started off okay. They started off okay. Lucian, Evelynn, Renekton, Jhin, Pantheon. These are things we could like understand, right? Because this was like a big portion of the meta. So this was okay. Okay? But they didn't, they just lost all confidence on Evelynn all of a sudden. Like, honestly, this Mad Lions looked better than any of the other Mad Lions, right? And then we continue. Team Liquid versus Mad. This one. Ashe, Evelynn, Camille, Syndra, Leona. We didn't like it because of Syndra, Evelynn. But at least, you know, in this game also, they had some fighting chances, right? I don't think this game was as one-sided as people wanted to make it out to be. But to be fair, Team Liquid took a lot of risks in the draft. Like, they had weaker matchups, and they had a Lee Sin that was as invisible as Evelynn. Right? So it's hard to judge. It's hard to judge. And then Mordekaiser solo killed Camille. Mordekaiser solo killed Camille, and it was a disaster. And then Mordekaiser got like a monster flank. Boom. So this was day 1. Day 2, Supermassive, Mad Lions. Here, they just lost to Twitch Rakan. They was like, fuck it, man. Let's lock it in. Let's lock it in. Let's pick it. Nidalee gets first pick. Twitch Rakan, Azir Senna, Hecarim, Zoe, Mordekaiser. Not too bad, right? Not too bad. Morde should win against Wukong, but he didn't. And Hecarim was pretty lost on the map. Early on, he got a comeback after being behind. I don't know. This day was probably the worst draft out of them all on the group stage portion. This was Lelia, Syndra, Shen, Ezreal, Nautilus. This is just a magic damage city. So my Lions just never figured out how to draft. They were in shambles. They shat their pants. And if you ask me what approach I would take is... If you ask me what approach I would take is just recognize that Humanoid is everything in this team. Humanoid was everything. He was the only one that kept a cool mind. Do everything in my power to make him succeed. Recognize that every other piece in the game is just to make sure that he succeeds. Don't put any attention on anything else. Simplify the game as much as possible for everyone else. There's examples of this happening all over the world in history. You can think of Samsung winning Worlds, right? Samsung winning Worlds in 2017. Ruler made sure, Ruler, they knew that Crown was a weaker player than Faker. And there's nothing wrong with that. Faker was really, really insane, right? So what they did was, Samsung knew they had a better, stronger bot side. Crown made sure he played champions that even 20, 30 CS behind, doesn't matter. It's no problem. Crown just sit tight. We're going to push bot, we're going to come into mid. No problem. We're going to bring ambition with us. We're going to push bottom, we're going to go into mid, and we're going to do this over and over again. Over and over again, over and over again. Don't worry. They covered up. They covered it up, right? They covered it up. There are ways to do this. There are definitely ways to do this. And Arome being a weak player is nothing new, right? Everyone's talking bad about him, but it's nothing new. And then the thought process could be as simple as, hey, why are we banning Ornn on red side? We give the Ornn, and when the enemy picks Ornn, we pick Malphite. We pick Malphite into Ornn. We don't care. We just pick Malphite. Malphite, good champion. Strong. We pick Maokai. You're 10 CS behind, 20 CS behind. We don't care. We don't give a shit. Don't give a fuck. You're going to be a useful champion. Pick Shen. Take Ornn. Let them first pick Ornn. We get a big first pick jungle. Okay, good. Make the enemy first ban Ornn on blue side. And then maybe Humanoid would get a Lucian, he would get an Orianna, he would get an Akali. Right? This would be neat. Just give the Ornn. Team Liquid showed us yesterday how to beat Ornn. We're all high on Ornn juice. Right? We're all high on Ornn juice. Let's give away an Ornn, and then let's maybe play Braum bot. Let's play Braum Caitlyn bot. That could be nice. We have the Braum ult. That's what Team Liquid did. That works, right? Ornn isn't the most OP champion in the game. Why is Ornn so strong in this plane? Because of the simplicity. Simple champion wins games in planes because the overall play field is worse. Okay. So enemy first pick Ornn, we get the Graves, and we just pick a tank. We just pick a tank. No problem. We pick a bro in the top lane. That we can easily go into Ornn. No problem. Ornn might be, a champion that is the strongest out of the tanks, but at least we will put our top lane in a position where he's not going to be not going to be that terrible. So just Mad Lions on red side shouldn't have banned Ornn. Easy. So that could be a way, right? Where you cover his mistakes. And then that's an idea to explore. And then maybe as blue side, maybe you would have to think, do we have to ban Ornn on blue? Because we're giving him a pass out. And then when blue side bans Ornn, all of a sudden Orianna open, Lucian open, you know, some of these champions will be open. And then okay, we can last pick top. We can pick mid earlier, right? These are like conversations you need to be able to have with your players. But if there's ego involved, and responsibility is not taken, you're stuck with drafts where you're trying to lie to yourself about what you are as a team. Who cares about Zillion? Why are you talking about Zillion? I think Camille is fucking broken. Is Malphite worse than Ornn? Is Malphite worse Ornn? It depends. Sometimes Malphite ult is way better than Ornn ult, right? Sometimes Malphite is a better champion than Ornn. So keep this in mind. What if Roma said pick me Renekton in G5 draft? I don't know what happened. I don't know. Malphite versus full AD is good. But Ornn is also versus full AD good. So it's like, you know. Even here, right? Here, we didn't look at the tiebreaker draft. So look at this tiebreaker draft. Orianna, Ezreal, Graves. Senna, Sett, Camille. Kog'Maw. This is a Malphite spot. Pick Malphite. No, pick skill matchup. Pick skill matchup that is determined by how the jungler plays. Let's pick that. I don't know how you reach this conclusion. Pick Malphite. Imagine here, Malphite. Enemy Kog'Maw mid, Malphite. Poof. Oosh. Huh. We don't know who made the decision of draft. We don't know. We don't know draft, guys. We don't know. Everyone wanted Malphite there. I'm not saying I'm some genius for calling Malphites here. Don't get me wrong. Fucking Malphite here is obvious. Boom, Malphite. Hammer fist. They should have lost that game too. Yeah, they should have lost that game too. Maybe it would have been better that way. Malphite's broken? No, there are spots where you can hide the weakness. You can hide the weakness of your players. And it just seemed like Mad Lions were delusional to what their players are. That's what was so disappointing. They just seemed as a team delusional about their problems. It's like the whole Lee Sin problem, right? There are many teams that picked Lee Sin when Lee Sin was meta. There were many teams that picked Lee Sin that had no business picking Lee Sin. But Malphite doesn't do anything. Honestly, for a little moment, I was like, what the fuck is this guy saying? But then as I read it out loud, I was like, that's pretty funny. So Lee Sin is another one of those, right? Lee Sin is 100% the champion is only useful if like you have a really, really insanely skilled Lee Sin player. Right? So like I was being honest with my jungler. But whenever I worked with a jungler, I was like, dude, your Lee Sin is just not good enough. Like this champion, there's no justify picking Lee unless you're really, really insane on Lee. There's some junglers that don't deserve to play Lee, right? And the same thing goes for many different champions. Nidalee in the same category, yeah. For example, on Fleek, we started practicing Nidalee too late. And on Fleek was not so good Nidalee because every other Nidalee in our region, they practiced Nidalee for like months before we started practicing it. So I was like, on Fleek, we can't invest time in Nidalee. I'm not going to pick it for you. We're not going to waste scrim time. It's just, we are too far out. We're too late. You are too behind on this champion. Okay. No problem. At the time, Set jungle was good. We're like, we just fucking play Set. We leave Set open, even though everyone thought Set was OP. If enemy picks Set, we prepared Sejuani. We found a solution. We found a very nice solution with picking Sejuani into Set. And this is how you have to work, right? You have to work to always... That's like a big part of drafting that people don't discuss. It's like covering for your weaknesses and covering for their strengths. So now I open up the chat and I saw Armand Winchester. Someone tell me how EU deserves 4 seeds. They barely deserve 3 seeds. How can you make that judgment after one tournament? Didn't you pick Lee Sin a couple of times for OnFleek? When did you decide to drop him? Well, OnFleek was a really good Lee. OnFleek was a really good Lee Sin. Schalke would make us proud. Well, maybe Schalke's online team. That roster, when they had success, they never played a single match on stage. And that apparently has been the biggest problem for Mad Lions. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to say that that Sandbox, we are a perfect team. Like, we're not at the World Championship. We have our weaknesses too. I made some bad drafts too. I'm not trying to say it. I'm just using it as an example to explore this conversation. Why is Sedge good into Set? Isn't Sedge easy ult target for Set? No, because she couldn't get punished and Set scales well. Who cares if Set has an ult target? You know, Sejuani scales like a fucking beast, man. Fucking monster, this champion out scales. Like, I'm not at Worlds. That's not the comparison that I'm trying to look for. Anyhow, I think this video went very, very long. This is the longest summary we had, but I just wanted to reflect on the Playins as a whole. I think it was a very important discussion to have. Mad Lions heavily, they dropped the ball. I wanted to remind everyone to, you know, send some nice messages over to them. Like, they already feel like shit from the performance. They had way high expectations over themselves, and you know, it is just a terrible situation, right? And with that being said, it is what it is. This was another short video. Thank you. That's cool. I think Soup dodged LGD by losing Legacy. You know, if they beat Legacy, they would have another chance to get first in the group. Why would they not take that? I think this is really, really silly talk. Silly talk. to try to convince anyone that Supermassive intentionally dropped that game against Legacy. In your example with On Fleek, how do you catch up on Nidalee? Do you just give up on playing that champ that season? Yeah, you catch up in the off season. Does LGC have a chance tomorrow? Yeah, well, we've seen that that anyone does, you know, anything can happen. Once again, if you sneeze during this video, bless you and bless your face. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Maybe let's do some live viewing tomorrow, and it will be a lot of fun.